Hello, 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 hello. Thank you so much for checking out the show, checking out this episode. I really, really appreciate it. Please, as always, make sure you say hello on your way in so we can acknowledge you. Yeah, did I put that up here? I did not. Come on in the building. Make sure you hit the like button and say hello so we can acknowledge you. Hello to you, Miss Independent. Thank you so much. Good evening to you, More with Less. Thank you so much for joining the show. Let's see. Couple of announcements here. I'm going to be posting more on TikTok. To start posting on TikTok and Instagram. I am very disappointed. Not that I'm really disappointed, but I am disappointed in this governmental administration and the things that they've done, in particular, this big, beautiful bill that just went through. And so I really want to try to address that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what my real what my real degree is in leadership. What's going on with that? And I'm going to explore a couple of those different options. So that's coming up on Instagram, TikTok, these short 1 or 2 minute videos. Nothing longer than that. Just try to get the ball rolling here. On Wednesday night, I plan to do more police stuff on my other channel, Dr. L's Breakdown, and on Instagram and TikTok, it should be Dr. L's Breakdown as well. So that's what's going on over there. So we got a good show for us tonight. Tonight we're going to break down or take a look at a brother who has kind of gone viral. At least I've seen him a couple of different places, and I've seen some other YouTubers breaking down his interview. And that some have asked me if I done it, and I have not done it. So I want to do it tonight. And this brother has really articulated the plight of men really well. And what's interesting to me, and why I find this to be interesting, is this particular space of talking about men's issues, in particular the men's dating issues, is there's been a lot of different people from a lot of different disciplines. I've watched child psychologists, childhood therapists, child development specialists, psychologists, psychiatrists, and just men's advocates of all races, both genders, men and women, really speaking up for men, and I really, really appreciate that. And here's another example of the brother who's in his early to mid 30s. I can't remember how old he is. Speaking truth and letting some ladies know what's going on. And so a couple of his clips have gone viral on Instagram. So I decided to break down the whole episode here. So we got a good one for you today. Thank you so much for saying hello. Thank you so much for checking out the episode. It is a 2-part episode that the ladies did, and we're going to review hopefully all of part 1. I am claiming fair use. I am going to break it up. I don't want to steal I don't like stealing all the people's content, but it is very, very good. Let's say hello to some people. Miss Independent, hello. More with Less, hello. Yoli's in the building. Hello to you. AG, hello to you. Good evening, my girl Les. Groovin' globally, hello to you. Good evening. Let's see. Who else is here? Rhonda's here. Thank you so much. And yes, please listen to my girl Les and hit the like button on the way in. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. So as usual, I have a warm-up video here. And this again is speaking to the plight of men. And I hope that everyone can really understand this. And I really hope that everyone can understand what this brother is saying. He really put it so succinctly. So we're going to add this to the stage here, and we're going to go.
If a man is telling me that a single mother cannot raise her boys to be men, but that man was raised by his single mom, what does that make that man? Serious question, let me know.
Fellas, don't worry, I got it. The reason he's giving you that statement is because as a man, he came to a point in his life when he realized, oh shit, I'm X amount of years old, and there's a lot of things that I am lacking as a man. It's a Eureka moment. It's a moment of clarity where you come into a space or you get exposed to certain things or certain people and you realize, damn, these people are much farther ahead than I am. They know things that I don't know. And if he's a decent man, he's going to try to figure out why he's deficient in certain areas. Now, through trial and error, possibly even having a mentor, possibly even having some really good friends that he can have conversations with where they can tell him, hey, bro, as a man, you should never move like that. That's when everything starts to click to him and he realizes, damn, because my father wasn't in my life, there's a lot of things that I just don't know. I'm living my life in a certain way because I had no male influence. Now, going back to being a decent man, the first thing he's going to now tell you is, hey, listen, I was raised by a single mom. I saw how that affected me. And the last thing I would want is for the same deficiencies that affected me to affect your son, because he may not get lucky the same way I did. There's a chance your son won't have positive friends around him. There's a chance your son won't have that Eureka moment when he realizes, oh shit, I'm deficient. It is no different from a man that went to jail for being in the streets. And then when he gets out, he comes back home to mentor the youth and he tells them, hey, leave that street life alone. Trust me, it's not what it's all cracked up to be. He would be the perfect person to be speaking on said situation because he actually personally experienced it. So going back to your primary question, a decent man that was raised by a single mom that understands his deficiencies will be the perfect person to tell a single mom why she isn't fit to raise her son alone. And as a young man, I was raised by both parents. The older I got, it became more clear to me on who had male influence in their life and who didn't. The presence of a father is critical to a child's development, whether they like to believe it or not. I hope that answers your question. Y'all keep the change.
So let me tell you something. That is definitely my experience. I really appreciate how this brother broke it down. In particular, when I went to the police department and I recognized that so many brothers out there were far advanced than I was, and I had a lot of catching up to do. I had a lot of work to do. And I was 22 years old when I became a police officer. So I had a lot of work to do, not only to understand my role in society, who I was as a person. I had become a father not too long after that. So there was a lot of knocks, a lot of hard knocks that I had to take in order to figure out who I was and where I was going and how I was going to get there. So this isn't to say that women can't do it. We just understand that a lot of times the knocks and the difficulties that men need to have, unfortunately, a lot of women just aren't equipped to do that. My mother did the best that she could, but I still needed male validation, male influence, and male socialization. And you don't really realize, what it takes to be a man, what it takes to move in these environments. It was true for me from my own perspective. When my son was in the military, he would call me up, during boot camp, and he would say, "Listen, Dad, I really appreciate all this stuff that you helped me with," because he was very young at the time. I think he was 17, turned 18 when he was in a boot camp. And these guys are in there 24, 25, because of the economy, couldn't get jobs, so they joined the military. And he would call me up and say, "Listen, I really appreciate all the lessons that you gave me because I feel as if I'm so far ahead of these guys." That was the qualities that I was able to instill in him. But the qualities that I was able to instill in him, I had to learn on my own. Now, I had good mentors. I talked about people in my church. I talked about my time at the summer camp, and I went to the boys club a lot. But there's something about one-on-one daily interactions that cannot be defeated. So to the ladies out there, do the best you can. If you can, get them some mentoring or some coaching, or you have a good church, pastors, or whatever. That's essential for them in order for them to turn to the best that they can be. So I really appreciate that, brother. He really, really put it succinctly. At some point in time, men, a good man really wakes up and says, man, I am really, really lacking something. And it's at that point that they had to make a decision. Either you're going to go left or you're going to go right. And I hope that when you go right, you take the right path, and then everything turns out right. All right. So that's that. We're gonna cue up the next video here, and this is a brother who was on a podcast with a couple of ladies from Canada, and they have a podcast. Their YouTube presence isn't that strong. Only 5,000 members. Only 5,000 members so far. 16,000 views. I thought that this would have gotten a lot more views, but it's gone viral. But whatever. The name of the video is "Modern Men, Dating Woes, and What the F is Going On." A raw conversation with Jeff James, Part 1. The name of the podcast is "Sharing My Truth." Maybe their audio podcast sounds very professional. Is much larger. But anyway, we're going to get into it. Any more greetings here? So hit the like button. We're going to stop it from time to time. So yes, we are going to stop from time to time to give a review and reaction. Greetings, Miles, to you. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for everyone who's tuned in. Again, this video has been kind of chopped up. People have seen it, so it may not be a big stream tonight, but hopefully people will catch it on the replay. It is worth watching, all that. So if you have any questions, comments, we'll get to them. Here we go.
USA.
Let's see here. Rewind a little bit.
Open.
Yeah.
You guys can go to sharingmytruth.com. And if you have any questions to us, and we can even do an episode, guys, we hope so much. Jeff James. So nice to get to know you. So nice to meet you today. All the way in our neighbor USA. We're so happy that you could come on the pod today. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I appreciate you both for welcoming me, and I hope to represent the homeland well.
That's good. Well, you're nice little northern neighbors. But obviously no harm done by. We love our neighbors.
We do.
South and north.
Listen, I'm not going to tariff y'all if y'all don't tariff me. So
Oh God, tariffs. What are tariffs, Mel? Tell us all. No, let's not get into it.
It's too depressing.
Well, thank you so much. Obviously, we want to start off with just allowing you to maybe just introduce yourself, tell our audience who you are, what you specialize in, and where they can find you on Instagram or any other socials.
great. So my personal account is by the St. James. My middle name is Saint, and my actual podcast that I recently launched on Instagram is Ask a Brother. And I'm just looking to get into this podcast space as far as what I do for a living. I am a therapist, licensed professional therapist. I'm trauma trained, certified to help people with PTSD. And I've been working in the field for 10 years, worked in prisons, with courts, schools, and now run an outpatient program. And we're the largest mental health practice in the city of Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
So I'm pretty busy, but I want to incorporate and figure out how to get into this podcast space, especially in terms of just bringing some more balance to the conversations. I'm noticing that it's really, really dominant with people who have very strong, but oftentimes uninformed views on things. And I think it'd be pretty cool to get some people who aren't looking to maybe just go viral or say something to just demonize one side versus the other. I think it would be pretty cool to kind of get to the next wave or iteration of podcasting and hopefully contribute in some meaningful way.
I love that. I feel like that's a great way to go about podcasting, and welcome to the podcast space.
Yeah.
It is obviously challenging. There's a lot of podcasts out there. But as long as you have, obviously you need an opinion, but it's great to also be informed. And that's why we also bring awesome guys like you to really get the actual information and not just our lovely opinions, obviously. But no, it's good to have an expert.
100%. And the male side of it, because that is, believe it or not, quite tricky to get the male side of it. And it's part of the whole problem that, like, I think you're saying, that's exactly what you're saying. There's too much of one voice and not enough of another. And there's too much extreme voices out there. And we're trying to, in our little tiny corner of the internet, change so far.
Do you work with mostly men? I know you said you worked with the prisons and the law system, and in Philadelphia. What does that look like, really?
I don't just work primarily with men. I'm pretty all over the place in terms of populations that I serve. I do couples. I have worked historically with children, men, women, single, depressed, anxious, suicidal, you name it. I've worked with all of these different groups. Now I'm at the stage, I guess, of my career where I'm heavily focusing on training therapists to offer better and more high quality care in the inner city. So with prolonged exposure, which is what we're certified in, our therapists are really exposed every week to the worst of things that can happen to people and helping them get their lives back on track. So whether it's gunshots or grapes or molestations or you name it, these people are still here, and we have to figure out a way to help them feel like they're getting something back in terms of their lives. So my job is to help the therapist help them.
Right.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, that's very intense. That's at absolutely one end of the human experience scale, like the horrible, very dark end. So you've seen a lot of very difficult stuff. I know you said that you work with couples,
Mhm.
and I know you talked a lot about what's going on today with men and women. And it's something we've seen a lot. In our podcast, we've done a lot of episodes on why there's so many single women, why there's so
Well,
many
I'm
single men.
experiencing it as a
Yeah.
single woman.
Yeah.
We
I don't
focus on you the whole rest of this.
focus on me because this must be a therapy session. That would be great.
So, yeah. And we've done a lot on dating apps, and they're just and
I'd like to ask you guys here. Thank you so much, Jayla. Everything is well with me. Thank you so much for asking. I'm going to put this in the chat here. Let's see here. Why do you think? Let's ask the question here. Start question and answer. Start a poll. Why do you y'all? Why do y'all? Let's keep it gutted here. Why do y'all think that? What the heck is the name of this podcast? Men have given up. Why do you all think that men have given up dating? Start this Q&A here. Why do y'all think that men have given up dating? Should be in the chat here. All right. Miles, dance shopping movie next. I didn't know I was live. I was listening to dating reports from China. They're getting desperate over there. Send me those, Garrett. Send me those dating reports. I did a show about that last night. This vid with the therapist was insane. He cooked. He definitely did. He was very, very good. Very good. We're in for a good treat. If you have not watched this video, he's definitely good. I've only watched part 1. There is a part 2 out. We'll get through part 1 and we'll maybe do part 2 Friday or Saturday. So,
judging by the comments we get on our social media, there are just so many issues. So many issues from the male side, from this very, and I know it's a big buzz thing at the moment. Everyone's talking about toxic masculinity, but equally, the narcissistic side of feminism.
She acknowledges there the narcissistic side of feminism, the narcissistic side of feminism. So this is the issue here, right? You got to have people who are going to acknowledge it, and this is becoming a problem. As I mentioned at the top of this, the reason I want to cover this is because a lot of people from a lot of different disciplines. Here's a therapist here. These podcast hosts. I don't know what their backgrounds are, but child development specialists are doing it. Marketing guys are talking about this. Economics are talking about this. People with high advanced degrees and all these different disciplines are just looking around and saying this is a problem. This is the problem. A Peaceful Life. What's good? What's good, brother? Thank you so much for coming on here. Too many negative experiences. I haven't given up. Okay, Miles. They're still demanding bride prices, $1,000,000+ yen yearly, upper 30s. They've lost their ever-loving mind. Did you watch the show we did last night? I did a show last night about that. It's on the members only. Are you members only? Anyway, we talked about that exactly last night. So yeah, it's a problem over there in China. And I pointed out that it's you think it's here. It's going on over there too. So, and this lady on this podcast just mentioned the narcissistic side of feminism. Let's continue on.
Which I don't think enough people talk about. But I wanted to get your opinions on, like, why is everyone single? Why can they not meet? What is going on? What is the big issue?
Yeah, that's a very, very big, broad question. What I tend to do, both in serious, potentially contentious conversations, whether it's in therapy or just in platforms like this, I actually start with kind of setting the tone when it comes to letting people know that they have a decision to make of what type of listener they want to be.
Mhm.
Typically, when there's these types of debates, interactions, or conversations, there's two types of people you can end up being.
Mhm.
One is a person who's primarily focused on whether something is true or not,
Mhm.
and whether or not your life aligns with that, or whether or not you need to grow to get your life more in alignment with said truth.
Now, this is very important right here. Before answering the question about why there's so many people single, he's got to paint this picture, and he's got to disarm people. This is a great tactic. What he's doing right here, he's disarming the anger, the animosity, and the refusal to listen, and just getting ahead of the potential for defensiveness. Oh no, it's not all women. It's not all this. No. Let's have a conversation, and you got to decide which one you're going to be. You're going to be an active listener and listen to my point of view, or listen to a point of view, no matter what the subject is, or you're going to just get off in your feelings and your emotions. This is a great tactic. So, guys, if you guys are going to enter into this type of conversation, this is exactly what you want to do. You want to disarm people. You want people to listen to you. You have to kind of lower the temperature. Great tactic here. Let's see. I'm glad some people haven't given up. Stay positive. Men stop dating because women are giving up the goods to men that don't have to pay for dates. Why is everyone single? We are all good men. Why am I still single? All these questions should have been answered years, even decades ago. Now it just sounds ignorant and disingenuous. Yeah, there's probably a lot of that going on. But this is why he's got to disarm these people. This is why he's disarming them in their conversation. Hello, high vibe. Always a pleasure to see you. Peaceful. They demand men pay a premium price for subpar goods. The market rejects them and the crazy demands. Many people are single because they aren't willing to be what they want. Very important. Many people are single because they aren't willing to be what they want. Okay, I get that, right? You want a good listener, partner, but you're not willing to be that. I get that. You should consider becoming a member. All right, here we go.
Or how said truth makes you feel. And based on how it makes you feel, that determines whether or not you'll accept it. This podcast and these types of conversations, people are going to be very tempted to want to go off of things that's being said and whether or not it's true, or not really about whether it's true or not, but how they're emotionally feeling about it. I'm more interested in trying to encourage all of the listeners and people that watch this to let's lean in more so on our logic, our reason, our rationality, and focus on whether or not some of the things that are being said are actually true about men, true about women in general, versus necessarily how it makes us feel. And I think that that's important because regardless of who I'm talking to, if they have a particular in-group that they consider themselves to be a part of, whether it's men, women, LGBTQ, political, whatever, what tends to happen is when they hear something they don't like about their group, their in-group, they want to be treated as an individual and say, that's not me.
Right.
But when they're talking about the out-group, they have no problem generalizing. So it's important that we know that those two things are typically what we're doing when we're listening to these types of conversations. And my
Great intro to what he's about to speak about. Again, great disarming tactic. Let's get to the truth about what's true about men and women, not what we feel, not what we think, not what we've heard, not our sometimes our anecdotal evidence or what happened to us kind of supersedes the general. So what he did right here was great.
more focused on whether or not something is true about a particular topic, and two, am I getting triggered because the thing that's being said about my group in general doesn't apply to me personally. These conversations, it may not apply to you on an individual level, but most of what I'll be referencing are things that pretty much can easily be verified. So I just kind of put that disclaimer out just because I know that these type of things are really, really sensitive. But in terms of the research I've looked into and thinking about this stuff for like over a decade, I kind of came to three main points. The first of which was the pill and birth control. The second was the sexual revolution or sexual liberation movement. And the third was social media. There's obviously
I'm going to rewind that. So there's three different points he's going to give, much of which I've talked about and a lot of others have talked about. This is in the chat here. That it's in the chat answering the questions. It's not popping up on the screen. So let me read it. High Vibe says to the question, why do y'all think men have given up dating? If men are looking to marry, then they would have less motivation to date. There is an overall distrust of women's intentions and expectations. That's actually very powerful. There's an overall distrust of women's intentions and expectations. And that goes to what we played last night to all the members who watched it. And Garrett is watching something similar or something like that. Says China is now a case study for women realizing they don't hand out relationships. Men give the commitment, not women. If we don't get what we want, we walk. Women need to learn to adapt to what we want. Well, I think we both got to adapt to what each other wants. But I hear your point there, Garrett. Gina Allen says, again, to the question, why do y'all think men have given up dating? Not just men, but I think that not enough people have done the work they need on themselves. Many aren't showing up after healing from trauma. Great reply. So I want to go back to this brother as he's talking about the 3 things that have ruined relationships today.
Which I've looked into and thinking about this stuff for like over a decade, I kind of came to 3 main points. The first of which was the pill and birth control.
Mhm.
The second was the sexual revolution or sexual liberation movement. And the third was social media. There's obviously way more things that can be listed, but I found that these were the top 3 major things that changed the overall trajectory of how human beings looked at each other,
Mhm.
valued each other, and even the general direction of what's happening to humanity in terms of the replacement birth rates.
Right.
So yeah,
I would include, modern Western divorce in that. Again, case study of what we looked at last night on the China study and what Garrett is looking at. I think that is a big game changer for men who want to consider getting married. Yeah, for men who want to consider getting married. He didn't list it here. I'm just going to throw that out there. I think everything he said was correct, but I also think you got to look at marriage. Divorce rates. Delusional standards that men don't create arousal, low standards for sexual preference. Let's see what else. Dating shouldn't be a race to the altar. Men have nothing to lose with ignoring women and waiting for younger women if they choose to continue. But women have everything to lose. The clock is ticking. Let them age out. They're not learning. Here we go.
we can expound on those 3, but yeah, the pill and birth control, the sexual revolution, and then also social media and the advent of social media, which includes by extension dating apps. I think that those are the 3 major things, unfortunately, that has rigged the system for a very, very small percentage of men to meet the qualifications for a large body or pool of women. And what both sets of men, the ones that qualify and the ones that don't, there's good and bad things that have come from that as a result. But what I will say is that I think if there's an overarching conclusion as to why so many people, men and women, are still single, still frustrated, can't seem to find happiness, I think we get to a place and point when you've had so many negative experiences, so many failed experiments in your teens and or 20s and or possibly 30s. Both sexes will eventually start to naturally get to a place where they're basically approaching the other group or other side with very, very high skepticism. And they're expecting for that side to give as much as possible and for they themselves to risk as little as possible.
I definitely agree with that. And that goes to Gina Allen's point, not just men, but I think that not enough people have done the work they need to on themselves. Many aren't showing up after healing from trauma. So we're getting all these traumatic experiences and then we enter into a relationship, enter into something. We're willing to not put out that much effort and we expect 100%, 100%, 10% effort from someone else. And this reminds me of the other lady that I played before when she was talking about giving up 90%. Don't give a man, she was saying this about your husband. Don't give your husband 100%, only give him 90% because you got to save that much for you. And I think that is such dangerous and terrible and bad advice. Again, to Gina Allen's point, you got to go into these relationships whole, healed, having done the work. Don't expect to get into a relationship and try to hold back some piece or part of you and not give yourself 100%. Otherwise, why waste somebody else's time? So
when you're highly distrustful, when you're extremely skeptical, you're going to approach relationships through a very transactional, less patient, less open perspective. You're kind of increasing the chances for the interaction to probably not go well or not work. You're going to probably see flags that are probably neutral. You're going to call them red. You're going to, you get what I'm saying? Like, I think that's what ends up happening, is that when we get disappointed, when we get divorced, when we get ghosted, when we get cheated on one too many times, the end result's going to be you're way more skeptical, you're less trusting, you're less open, and now you want the other party to give so much more, and you're trying to give as little as possible
because you don't want to get hurt.
because you don't want to get hurt. You want to risk as little as possible. So I think between those three things I categorize in the overall conclusion of what I think is the motivating factor for what we're doing, I think that's what ends up happening.
Well, I kind of want to actually go back into what, well, like with that, you said that there's qualified and unqualified men.
Yeah.
What can you expand on that, on what that really means for you?
Obviously, it's slightly different when it comes to an individual woman by individual person, for sure. But there are certain, I don't want to say universal, but there's usually general attraction triggers that a lot of women will kind of espouse and express. One of them being they typically want a man that's taller than them. Right? So by default, if you're shorter than most women, the pool of women that's even going to see you and you being good to them is already going to knock you down quite a bit. So we can even jump into dating apps, because I think this applies to what is it, right? A lot of women are typically looking for in the past. And when I say within the last like 5 years, this incel culture, this red pill thing, it was referenced on Adolescence, this 80-20 rule. A lot of men between their late 20s and early 30s, they don't have to hear it on social media or hear it from some charismatic figure to start to realize and experience their actual own lives. When you were in high school, there was the popular guys and everybody else. So the popular guys, the whole every other month, it seemed like there was a new girl that potentially was trying to get his attention. It was the jock, it was the good-looking guy, it was the athlete, et cetera, et cetera. In high school, you saw this guy who seemed to get an inordinate amount of attention from a lot of the girls. And then you had the quote unquote average guys. And then you had the guys who effectively just were kind of ignored. When you got to college, that typically looked either the same or started to worsen. But what happened with social media is it changed women's expectations and the pool of men that they actually thought they could potentially have access to.
Right.
So what that means is that generationally, 40, 60, 80 years ago, the pool of men that would even know this woman would exist was relatively related to her city or her town.
Yeah.
Now it's a whole campus. Now,
So I want to ask another question here. What is a qualifying man to the ladies, right? What is it that is going to qualify a man in your eyes? Another chat that I put in here. So what is no one's focusing on character. This is the problem, right? So what is it to the ladies in the chat? What makes a man quality or qualifying for you? And list whatever you think, whatever you're looking for. A minimum. What's up, New York Chocolate? Let's see. Anyone see the videos of women freaking out because at fancy restaurants they notice only women around, men just simply disappeared? There was an article about that in the New York Times. Yeah, the article about that in New York Times. Was it New York Times? Yeah. I covered that a little while ago. So that it's becoming a problem. Guys are actively retreating. So anybody want to answer the chat? What is or question and answer, what is a qualifying man to the ladies? No one's focusing on character. Here we go.
now it's multiple people from other campuses. Now it's national, global market. But now, and we could even argue it's a global market that you're dealing with. So as a consequence, her view on optionality has changed because her lens is that, yeah, maybe the guy I'm looking for isn't in my neighborhood, but I can effectively come into contact with any guy on the planet so long as he has social media.
So does that also affect the men as well because they have access to all the women in the world now?
Yes, but that typically
Now that shows you she really didn't understand what this man was saying. That question right there that she just asked, because he said his analysis was that these ladies have elevated their standards, and now they're not only looking at the men in their campus, their neighborhood, their high school, their college campus, etc., but their pool is expanded because they are looking for the top tier. And to the jock, remember he made the analogy of the jock. Everybody wants the jock. Everybody wants the jock. So the ladies too are looking for the jocks, whether they're actually physically jocks or they're the CEO of a company, a la the video we analyzed last night. They're looking for these type of men. for these type of men, and the other men in their orbit are invisible. But her question says, well, that's true for the men, that now their pools are open. That's only true to the men who are whatever makes them quality men. A man who is not in their league, not being looked at, and he's going to explain this, the man who's not in their league, they're not even looking at. So if you're not looking at them, chances are other women from around the world are not looking at them either. It just shows that there's a really big disconnect, and how, because a woman will log onto Facebook, Instagram, dating apps, and get flooded with DMs, and you think that everybody's like that. You think the guys are like that, but every time they've run this experiment, and even ladies who have created fake male profiles realize it don't happen like that for men. And she, having done all this work and done these podcasts, still asked that question. Maybe she's asking for the benefit of the listener, but it's just not. It just doesn't work that way. To the question, what is a qualifying man to the ladies? Let's see. Miss Independent says he's got to be thoughtful. Considers both people. He's got to have ambitions. Has ambitions beyond where they are in life. Do what he says. Be a man of his word. Let's see. Got to be an active dad. Actively participating, raising his child, even tempered. Mass Gaining guy says dating is cooked and 2025 is cooked. The truth is physical attractiveness is money, willingness to risk legal marriage. And thank you so much. I know you've been questioning about that. hitting the like button there. I certainly appreciate you hitting the like button, and everyone else who hit the like button on New York Chocolate. Thank you so much. Able to communicate effectively, protective, family oriented. Very good. Thank you so much for that. Let's continue on with this.
The men as well, because they have access to all the women in the world now.
Yes, but typically it's in two categories: the men that most women say that they want and are attracted to, and the men that don't qualify. And when we say qualify, we can say attraction triggers that includes physical height, a certain amount of money, resources that he can connect based on the lifestyle that he's living, the people he's surrounded with, you name it. Where in essence, it sounds kind of bad to say, but like physical appearance, height, social cues relating to attraction triggers, and whether or not other women think he's also attractive and other men respect him, that's functionally the markers for whether or not a man's going to be taken seriously, be responded to, engage with multiple women or a lot of women, and potentially get access to no women whatsoever without having to pay for a transaction. That's the
So you got to. So if you're a guy watching this, right, you got to work on your other game, right? Nothing. I don't want to say there's nothing you can do or very little you can do. You can't change your height, but you can change your character, or you can adjust your character. You can work on your sense of humor, your outgoingness, your social mobility. You got to work on the things that you can work on, right? So in the answer to the question, what is a qualifying man to the ladies? A high vibe wrote basic qualification: be well-spoken, well-read, great conversation, physically attractive, and kind. Next tier would be financially sound, emotional maturity, spiritual awareness. These are all things you can work on. And to your physical attractiveness, listen, if you're 5'3", there's nothing you can do about that, but you can get your money up. You can become charming and be funny, right? So those are things you got to work on as a man. You have to work on those things, right? You can become well-read, whether it's listening to podcasts, audio books, or actually physically reading books. You have to become knowledgeable. A woman wants to be able to bring you to a cookout, to her family reunion, to go to some social event, and when you're being talked to or asked questions about the economy or about politics or whatever, you got to be able to at least be able to hold a conversation. One word answers and grunts ain't gonna cut it. So here we go.
reality of it. So what's happening is I think that things are so skewed with these dating apps. We're looking at all the stats and they're all saying something very similar. Bumble is a great example because my wife and I met through Bumble.
Oh,
And
congratulations.
thank you. We got married about 2 years ago, I think, and our baby was born last summer. And
Oh,
What a success story.
seriously, Bumble should sponsor you.
They should.
so out of wanting to like I'm so grateful I'm out the game because we joked around when we were first dating and she was first hearing about the incels, the red pill, blue pill, this and that. And she asked me about passport bros. And she said, what do you think about this passport bros? Like, what's with these guys? Would you have been one if we hadn't met? I said, yep.
Sorry, passport bros?
Bros.
Passport bros.
Yeah.
What is that?
Passport bros is where men are seeking the option of going abroad to interact and have access to women who, for a variety of reasons, it could be just for recreational sex or tourism.
I've talked about that. I actually wrote a piece for Medium. That's not passport bros because people have been not sex trafficking. Well, that's true too. They've been going sex tourism for years. The passport bros is a specific movement that is geared towards specifically looking to move overseas or get a woman and get married to them. Are there people who go overseas to engage in sex tourism? Yes, men and women do that, right? So, but I don't like when people kind of make that categorization, but whatever.
It could be because they want to look for more traditional women. They may want to look for women who aren't nearly as progressive or feminist in nature in comparison to the West. It's a whole host of spectrum of reasons for why men do it. And she had asked me flat out, why would you do it? And I said, I'm gonna be honest with you. Between my last relationship and meeting you, dating and trying to date was actually extremely difficult. I'm not a model. I don't make all the money in the world. I don't have the greatest physique. But I got a fair decent amount of matches and interactions with women.
Mhm.
The process between trying to get them to respond, then getting them to actually set a time to meet, actually meeting them, and it actually leading towards something was a lot harder than I had realized 10, 15 years ago.
And that's crazy because you are a good looking guy, right? Like,
listen, I'm going to tell you right now that don't matter. I had the same issues. Talking to someone, having a conversation, meeting them, following through with it. They got so many different options. They're always looking to scale up. They got you. Okay, somebody else. It's crazy. Furthermore, these foreign women are no different than American women. I found that out the other day. Well, we talked about the China incident. If you got a particular story, brother, Dr. Steele, welcome. Thank you. So let's go back to this story here. So he's telling a story about how he couldn't get a lot of ladies here.
The process between trying to get them to respond, then getting them to actually set a time to meet, actually meeting them, and it actually leading towards something was a lot harder than I had realized 10, 15 years ago.
and that's crazy because you are a good looking guy, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe
yes,
you're not George Clooney, but like, that doesn't matter, right?
Hold on. I mean, I ain't George Clooney now, but we ain't gonna sit here and act like I'm Shrek. Like, but what it was I was realizing that there was a level of entitlement and arrogance and certain assumptions of what I had to give and offer to people who I don't think realize where we were in comparison to each other at the dating market. So I'm
Austin to me was always a problem. He was always a problem because he was exemplifying everything that was negative about that particular passport bro environment. Going up to women, I just think it's just so tacky to go up to women, videotaping them, getting their number, saying how easy it is, asking your server out for dinner. Come on, man, that's corny, man. I'm not saying you can't ask him, but why are you doing this for clicks and likes and all that? He to me always exemplified the worst of what was going on out there, right? He wasn't professional about how he was moving. That was always his problem to me. A few qualities from here: resourceful, initiative, socialized, generous, open-minded. Appreciate that, Jayla. Y'all hit the like button. Where we at with the likes? Hit the like button.
35 now. So I'm going to give you an example of what this looked like. While on the app, there was 2 apps I was on, Bumble, and the second app I was on was in the States. We had one called BLK, was black, which is like a lot of black people would get on.
I'm going to tell you right now. I mean, he's obviously got married off of Bumble. This is exactly my story. I came back out here like, what happened to the dating market?
On it, and I was obviously in Philly, and it when you get on the plane and land somewhere, the location shifts in the app, and I had to go visit a family member for her 40th birthday in Chicago, and this was right at the time when I like first met my wife, like my now wife, like 2 weeks into us knowing each other, meeting each other, and I left from Philly, and I had a layover in Atlanta.
47 people watching. Hit the like button. We had 19 likes. Come on now. Hit the like button.
For 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And then I left from Atlanta, got to Chicago, got off the plane, walked outside and got in my cousin's car when she came to pick me up.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned on my phone and I had 70 matches.
Wow.
70. And I wasn't on the app. I wasn't doing anything. I was in Atlanta for 2 hours and I was in Chicago for maybe 20 minutes. And I had 70 women who liked my profile.
In Chicago.
Between Chicago and Atlanta, the 2 hours in Atlanta, and
Crazy.
20 to 30 minutes in Chicago, I had 70 women. I'm 30 at this point. At that time, I was about 30. And I don't think women realize what that means for all the men who look anything close to me, look better than me, make way more money than me, what their pool, who's on these apps, not for 2 hours or 2.5 hours, days, weeks, months at a time. I don't think that they actually know. So when you're in that position as a man and you're considered in the top 5, top 10% in most categories, and it's not coming from a place of arrogance, I don't think that they truly get that the man that they're willing to ignore 90% of men for, the leverage and opportunity and choice that he has.
Right.
So it's a very, very small example of I'm literally hopping on planes and leaving and I'm not doing anything. And I had almost 80 women that initiated contact with me just by dropping in 2 cities.
Wow.
And Atlanta's considered the Black capital. Is a lot of African Americans or Black Americans live in Atlanta as well as Chicago. So of course the data was probably skewed to a degree, but that's the reality.
A lot. That's a lot of.
Well, just for being there for such a short amount of time, like
Yeah.
I've heard people say that a lot. Actually, that in a weird.
Yeah, he's actually complaining. 70 complaints. 70 matches in 2 cities is not bad. I mean, it's really not bad. When I travel to different places, when I was on those apps, I mean, particularly when you go to Black cities, yeah, Chicago, Atlanta, when I did layovers in Atlanta, you do get a lot more, but nowhere near, I'm sure, what the ladies got going on, Also, when I went to Seattle too, because a lot of brothers out there don't date sisters for whatever reason. When I was in Seattle, I got a ton of matches, but I'm in Seattle. I'm never going to see these people again.
Way women have made this for men, like we've designed it, modern feminism, that they don't need to have a relationship because all these women, why would they want one? But I want to go back to quite a few things that you've said because it's an interesting age difference we have here. So you're 35, Susie's 29, I'm 52.
30 next week. Want to cry? Want to cry?
Yeah. Cry her a river.
She's crying and she's going to turn 30. Yeah, okay. So it's my experience that the men live with mom and want to move in with me. That's my perspective. Not sure why digging at me. I got a couple of videos coming out about this, guys who are still broke at 50 or whatever. So I got like 1 or 2 videos coming out about this. They're scheduled to come up on maybe next week or so. But I don't know. I can't identify with this. I was actually talking to Anita from Better Love Movement about that. Like I can't identify with guys not being on the game. I can't identify with it. I can't identify. I obviously I know it's a thing, but like being satisfied with that, I don't know. In China and USA, men of all ranges qualifications have abandoned marriage because of no return on investment. Yeah, we covered that last night at Peaceful. Absolutely.
Yeah, no. Is I obviously see it from a different perspective. I've been married for 25 years. I'm British, so it's a bit different in Europe and the UK. But for me, looking at these comments, so I think to myself from the comments you've made, the sexual revolution, the pill. Well, Gen X, all of my friends are on the pill. We're all sexually revolutionized, shall we say? We weren't. We were already living more promiscuous lives than our parents. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
But all of my friends got married. all of them had careers. They're all educated. They've had children. So, when you're a woman, you have children, you've maybe worked at different paces and rates throughout your career because of children. But they've all managed to find a mate and have a career and have children. Balancing all of those incredibly difficult, but the point is that they've done it. And we dated in real life. So where I met my husband through a friend that worked, I worked with this friend and he worked with this friend, and she kind of matched us up, which is kind of traditionally how it happened. Like a lot of people of my generation met at work, which of course we've eradicated because of Me Too. So, everybody I know in their 50s, 60s, late 40s met at work. You can't do that anymore for fear of something happening. So that knocks out a massive pool of people to meet. So I think to myself, and you were talking about high school, it was the same in my day. There were the handsome guys and the good looking girls and, the people who weren't so attractive. Nothing has actually changed in any of what you've said there, I don't think. Like, people got more dates than others and so on. What's changed is social media and this piece that you're talking about. Like, you can see the possibilities being infinite, apparently. And, and that men see all these girls on Instagram who are all AI generated anyway, but they think they're real and they think there's always something better over their shoulder kind of thing. There's a certain piece of it that seems to me, from my perspective, that has changed. And it's the fact that we don't date in real life. People don't meet in real life situations as much. They do a bit, but not as much.
Yeah.
It's very hard because people are very nervous, and particularly nervous at work.
Yeah.
And particularly men. Men do not want to approach women. They're terrified. And I don't blame them. And so it's the way that we meet and the way that we present ourselves. As human beings, have we actually changed that much between, so you're a millennial, I'm Gen X, you're just a millennial, in terms of levels of promiscuity and levels of career, in levels of stuff like that? I'm not, maybe a bit, but not a huge amount. The generation before, yes, there's a big difference. But Gen X to millennial to Gen Z, we've all had multiple partners, we've all dated, we've all whatever. It's something that has really changed. The key piece, and it must be the internet, is the socializing, the apps for one, which obviously didn't exist, and the way people are meeting. I mean, it's just bizarre what it's doing. It's bizarre.
Yes, I agree with you that two of the three things I listed obviously existed during your time, but it did open the door and started something that led to what we got to today.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, what I would argue is, and I agree with you about the social media component, but reevaluate if the social media opened up the door in terms of our views and perspectives on optionality. If the sexual revolution and sexual liberation either continued, what did that look like and mean for all the countless couples and individuals and families where it didn't work?
Okay.
And what were the ramifications and consequences of the increase in single parent homes, and the increase of people not knowing who their father was, and the increase of 1 in 3 paternity tests in the States specifically? People they can't identify who the biological father is.
That's such a great point that he brought up, because she was trying to trivialize and say, well, we're all sleeping around, we're all in the birth control, we're all getting baby deletions. She didn't say that part, but we're 50 years old, we were all doing this kind of stuff. What changed? Well, it started that, but then when you start going down this path, next thing you know, you got a bunch of baby deletions. Next thing you know, you got people who don't know this, and the kids aren't at home, right? Generation X, we were the first generation to the latchkey kids, right? All this type of stuff. This caused this, and it's just been a slow build. And again, the technology, which is the correct assessment, technology plus this sexual freedom, the sexual freedom and the physical freedom with being latchkey kids. We're all experimenting on each other and all this kind of stuff, right? This is what has caused many of us to get to where we are. So, well, who made the rules of interaction so murky? Well, we know what that is. OP. Men 5'3", men 6'8", men in shape, men out of shape, still no takers.
Or was.
Really? 1 in 3.
1 in 3. And that's who's tested. So reimagine, you could do the math on people they can't identify who the biological father was.
Really? 1 in 3.
1 in 3. And that's who's tested. So reimagine, you could do the math on all of that. And then lastly, as the push from the 60s, 70s, and 80s on of more and more women going into the workforce and getting more educated increased, the pill and birth control convinced 2 generations of women to push and prolong when it is that they should start thinking about children. And the problem was that as they simultaneously did that, they did not realize that when they decide, well, it's time for me to slow down, it's time for me to settle down, it's time for me to get serious about the screening process of who I'm going to cohabitate with, have sex with, potentially do life with long term, their competition is now different.
I was watching a clip of the Pierce Morgan show. Pierce Morgan had a couple of different panelists on, and they played a clip of these couple of ladies similar to this who were having a conversation, and they were joking about not knowing how many baby deletions they had. I can't remember, 4, 5, 6, I can't remember, playing this. And of course the panel was reacting to this interaction. And it was kind of disgusting because, and I do, again, somebody asked me to talk about baby deletions. I made a video about that. But you know, that's slated to come out soon. But you know, if the baby deletions talk, and this is all the sexual revolution talk, that's why I'm bringing this up. If the baby deletions talk was about, you know, safety to the baby, it's not going to be viable, or if it was about women, the potential harm to the woman, that would be a serious conversation that I think people would take seriously. But these ladies are just getting them like they're going to the dentist. Like, okay, what is up with this, right? So that was the baby deletion talk. But these two podcasters were laughing and joking about it. I don't even know. It's great. We can talk about this, right? There's no shame. This is what they were saying, right? Then you get that, and you got people, popping Plan Bs, and women rapping about this nonsense. And then what's the other one? Oh, he's taking PrEP and stuff. Like, yo, what is going on? What is going on with our sense of shame, sense of duty, sense of honor, sense of what is going on with that? And it's just really, really sad that this is the state of where we are. And again, as Jeff James is saying, this has been a slowly building thing that every single step of the way has just gotten progressively worse for society, for society. Yeah, and this is a problem. This is exactly what the problem is. Y'all hit the like button. Let me get some comments in here. Let's see. Is the use of birth control declining? It seemed that way for me, what I kept hearing. I don't know about that. I don't remember. I don't remember if it's declining. I do know the black men are the most one who are going to use it the most. And there's other methods. There's other methods. A lot of ladies are just relying on Plan Bs, baby deletions. It's really sad. They just had a dating event in China. 1,000 women showed up, 0 men. Global checkout. These palm women are looking at him like they don't believe this conversation applies to them, and he's married to him. Is he married to a white woman? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. I never even thought about that question. Nah. Tommy Lawrence says the women want to found families. Tommy Lawrence, she don't even have a family, right? She's 29, 30 or so, right? She hasn't, she's not even practicing what she preaches. It's a game to me. Once women know what you offer, they build walls around it, just like keeping your interest. All right, let's continue on.
So it hitting the window of when you're in high school or college, when it first kind of started, this was still an ever-growing thing. The full effects of it now we're seeing post 2000.
Right.
So that's really what obviously social media is the third big mega piece that really changes it all, but it actually also impacts all these other factors. So now, for instance, let's take birth control, recreational sex, and social media. What does that do to a...
Well, he also did say that there's other things we can add. Adult content is definitely affecting that. Guys are just checking out because they don't need to. I would also throw COVID in there. COVID, a lot of guys, to answer the question, why are men checking out? COVID said we were locked in the house. I got my video games. I got my adult content. I can order DoorDash. What do I need this headache for? And again, we talked about in the chat, the socialization aspect of it. These are just some other avenues of why guys are checking out. And as already been added in the chat, the juice just isn't worth the squeeze, right? There is no return on it. They're seeing a lack of return on investment. The ladies are demanding more. Even Jeff James said that. They're demanding more. And again, the question has to be asked, what are the ladies providing in return? And if I'm spending all my money, I'm getting 90% of you, you're holding back. This becomes problematic. And this is answering the question why men are not are checking out of the dating game.
Young girl or woman's brain about seeing all these people traveling, seeing all these people purchasing all these things, and all these lived experiences they want to have before they have.
This is social media is talking
what
about.
What does that do to a young girl or woman?
This is the social media aspect. We talked about this in China, the toxic advice, they called it. Toxic advice.
The third big mega piece that really changes it all, but it actually also impacts all these other factors. So now, for instance, let's take birth control, recreational sex, and social media. What does that do to a young girl or woman's brain about seeing all these people traveling, seeing all these people purchasing all these things, and all these lived experiences they want to have before they have children? And their belief system is, I can keep pushing the motherhood thing further and further down. I'll get to it. 30, 32, 34, 36, modern medicine. This celebrity said that they had a kid at 38 or 42. I can get to it when I'm ready. And by the time a lot of them are quote unquote ready, the rules aren't the same. And I'm going to say something that I've heard, and I'm sure you two may have heard about the mountaintop analogy in terms of the dating marketplace. Women start at the top, and that's the reality. When you turn 18, in terms of the desirability factor, you start at the top. The moment you turn 18, you didn't have to do anything. You just had to exist. You have inherent value in the dating market with other teenagers, with men in their 20s, men in their 30s, men in their 40s. And that run from 18 to 25 is when you're probably going to get the biggest pool of men younger than you and older than you that's going to be interested in wanting to do life with you, and potentially for the reason of you being potentially the mother of their children.
I just want to chime in here
Yeah.
because since being the young one who's single.
Yes, the young single one.
The young single one. Obviously I'm not really on the app because I have just given up just for now. I'm just over it. And I have actually, I've not really been on birth control in my life, here and there, and then I like it. And so I use condoms and that's what works for me. But I do find it really interesting, obviously, that you're.
Look, I mean, not that I'm a prude. I'm not a prude, but again, we brought up being shameful. Somebody put this in a comment here about women being shameless. Women being shameless. Oh yeah, culture made women shameless and men being shameful. It's an unclear playing field. And of course, we want people to be protective and all that. But 30 years ago, you wouldn't hear a lady saying, "Oh yeah, I just use condoms." And I know it sounds prudish for me to even bring it up, but I'm just saying, it just kind of, it still hits my ear wrong, and I'm probably just an old man. Could be. I don't know.
Saying, I know the divorce rate is 52%, right? If people are getting divorced. But that means that people are getting married when they're younger and possibly having children when they're younger.
No.
You're saying that's not happening?
No, there's no correlation between the divorce rate versus when people are actually getting married. There's marriages lasting 2 years. There's marriages lasting 4 years. People getting married at 25 and getting divorced by 29. There's not really a causal or correlated link to that. And that's the problem, is it's really the illusion of time. It's the illusion of time. And the difference is, when I was talking about that mountaintop, that 18-year-old boy has functionally nothing to offer most women that are single. He's the one that has the time.
Yes, right.
When the magic number for both sexes is 30. Because that's the time, if he didn't get himself in a situation where he has to pay a lot of money out in alimony or child support, if he's not incarcerated, if he's been steadily increasing his value just naturally with work and making more money and building his body and his brand up. At 30, this is what happens. She one side, most desirability with the greatest pool of men, when she hits 30, I'm going to throw out a number. Let's say that's cut in half.
Right.
Let's say that's still attractive. She's still desired. There's still a lot of people that want her. But now her competition is everybody that's younger than her, and everybody that's her age, and everybody that's a little bit older than her that potentially looks better than her. and potentially has a better attitude than her and less negative experiences with men.
For sure. I mean, I'm experiencing
Yeah.
it. Like, I see exactly what you're saying. Like, not that I'm right now even looking for a relationship,
Mhm.
but like there is the fact that I know a lot of my friends who are in their early 30s, let's say, and they
Again, why do I not need a relationship? I got a career, and I'm not saying this is necessarily a negative. I'm just saying that this is the market. I'm not looking for a relationship. I got a career. I got somebody who comes down and knocks me down every once in a while, or I got my wine and I mean, you just got other things, and that's great. But where is she at? Does she ever want to have children? And this is Jeff's point. You're starting. She's 29, about to be 30. If I heard it correctly. I mean, when do you start thinking about kids if you want to have them? And how fair is it to a guy who's done the work, got where he wants to be? Maybe he wants to have 2, 3, and now you're pushing it because you want to put it off. I mean, these are all things that guys are considering. So yeah, so now you're 29. Is a guy who's 32. Should he look at you or should he look at the 24-year-old? And again, I mean, I'm not saying I'm saying that this is a difficult situation for the ladies to be in because you want to balance career, education, having fun, but unfortunately, you're on a clock, and your clock is shorter than a guy's. And listen, I've had this conversation with my own daughter. I'm not just trying to pick on anybody. I'm having this conversation with my own daughter, and she knows it too. We're doing better with the likes. Hit the like button. 50 people watching, 53 watching. Hit the likes.
are finding it very hard to find a boyfriend. Like, let's say they broke up with their boyfriend like 2 years ago and they're trying to find a partner. It's
Yeah.
very, very hard. But I'm also finding, I don't know, maybe if you have some experience with men around like obviously your age, I find that a lot of those men who are in relationships aren't happy actually with their relationships. And a lot of them are,
Happy or unhappy?
unhappy.
Unhappy.
Like a lot of them are cheating or they're just not giving what they should to their partner.
Mhm.
What is that with men? And obviously, like, I don't know if they're going to get divorced, like if there's going to be a bigger divorce right now because of all of these, social media apps. It's a lot, easier to find someone else or even just like, Ashley Madison, someone to your house. Like it, we're getting, and I'm now seeing it where like, I'm like, why would I want to even get into a relationship if most of these guys are cheating on their wives, right?
Okay. I'll answer that, and then we can just jump straight into men cheating and why they do it because it sounds very relevant. The first thing is I can't speak to the UK, Canada, Australia, and other westernized cultures or countries in terms of like some of their rates for divorce or marriage, etc. Well, what I will say in the States is 70% of all divorces are initiated by women.
Yeah.
80% if she's college educated.
Mhm.
So regardless of level of happiness, for whatever reason, men aren't typically, on average, initiating the divorce. That doesn't mean that they're all happy. That doesn't mean that they're all faithful. It just means that for whatever reason, that's not their go-to when they are unhappy. Now, how to make up for that unhappiness? They can stay at work longer. They can find other hobbies with friends. They can look for outsourcing the things that they feel their partner isn't doing with other women. There's a whole host of reasons for why men might ideally want to stay or not break up their home or have their kids moving between households. There just is other factors that's probably in their heads for why it is that they're choosing to stay. In the last podcast I met with the mom advocate, I talked to her about the happiness factor not really being something historically throughout almost all of human civilizations when it came to marriage. That really wasn't a factor.
This is an important point. He's saying that this happiness factor is now part of the problem, right? Women are filing for 70 to 80% of the divorces, claiming to be unhappy or claiming irreconcilable differences or whatever. And now it's all about my happiness. All about my happiness. This guy is really dropping some gems here. He really, really is.
And now it is. And unfortunately, you can't perpetually be happy. You can't always be happy. And you have a group that when they're unhappy, you have to kind of ask them. And I've even asked women this directly. If you have to choose between your own happiness or the happiness of your entire family, which do you choose? A lot of them are going to say their own happiness.
A lot of men or a lot of women, sorry.
A lot of women are
Wow.
going to say their own unhappiness. But when you ask men, the data speaks for itself. They'll stay in unhappy situations for the sake of the kids, for the sake of finances, for the sake of image, for the sake of status or reputation, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't mean that they don't do things on the side to supplement that, but their view of happiness isn't nearly as important to them as it is to a lot of women in the modern age.
And so we saw that when we watched the video last night. Listen, this is really, really a bad situation that we're into. And I've read studies like this as well, saying that women, if you're given ladies a choice about with their own personal happiness. Actually, I recorded a video today where this Indian lady was saying, from India, was saying the same thing. It's like, my happiness means more, and I don't want the life that my parents had. I want to be happy. I want to be, she talked about, old-fashioned gender roles and all this other stuff. They are willing to blow up their families to be happy. This fleeting sense of happiness, not contentment, not duty, sense of honor. And you can go back and watch the semi-argument that I had with Anita about that, just duty and sense of honor. This is something that men are looking at and saying, I'm not going to sign up for this. Again, we're answering the question, what's going on here? Why are men checking out? Why don't they want to do this? Well, if you got ladies saying that their happiness matters above the family, the children, the husband, and the union that we have going on, if your happiness matters above that, and you're willing to blow this up, and you don't believe that you have any sense of duty and honor, why am I going to sign up for this?
So I thought it would be opposite. That's so interesting.
No, that's why women aren't leaving happy marriages.
Yeah.
They're leaving ones when they're unhappy.
The statistics are that married men are the happiest group and single women are happy. Like married women are not as happy as married men. Like married men are more happier than married women.
So the funny thing about that stat, and it's threefold that I'll say with that. One, you have to wonder when in women's lives are they answering that question?
Mm-hmm.
When they're married.
So this was actually brought up to me by someone who used to follow the show. She doesn't follow anymore. She disagrees with me a lot, or she disagreed with me a lot. And so she sent me something about these stats, and stats about happiness, and there's more women happy, more women are happy and single, and this, that, and the other. But there's been a lot of work that's done on that. And when they look at what you're calling happiness, what the standard is, and in comparison to other things, how that measures up and how that levels up to the level of happiness. Also, when you look at women who are happier, particularly later in life, they're happier later in life. You may be a 50-year-old woman or 60-year-old woman because they have family, because they have friends. And again, families, they have kids. Maybe their husband is gone, maybe they're divorced and now they're happily divorced or whatever, but they still have other things to supplement that. He's going to kind of address that, but this is the pushback against these different types of situations of when these surveys are quoted. Well, women are happier than men, and married men are happier, and single women are happier. It's the time that they're asking the question what the level of happiness is and what their barometer is for happiness. So that it's more complex than just women are just happier than men, or single women are just happier than men, and that's seems to get left out of the equation a little bit there. That's because the world now tells people that their own personal happiness is and should be the most important factor in life. Absolutely. This rugged individualism, or this individualism that we got going on here in the Western world, that is now creeping into other aspects of the world, is a problem. The old folks used to say to girls, if you don't find yourself a husband in high school or college, you're going to be an old maid. Well, I think I don't know. Hopefully not. Majority of these ladies today have no clue what happiness is, right? Y'all hit the like button. Where we at with the likes? Hit the like button.
Because I envision that.
Like married women are not as happy as married men. Like married men are more happier than married women.
So the funny thing about that stat, and it's threefold that I'll say with that. One, you have to wonder when in women's lives are they answering that question? When they're married. Because I envision that when they're answering that question throughout the duration of their marriage probably matters. I think because statistically speaking, they experience a fuller range of emotions, and neuroticism seems to express itself more within the female population. It's not unusual to me to hear the ups and downs of happiness, sad, ecstatic, depressed amongst talking with women. That's just not that's not strange to me in my field of mental health and psychology, honestly. And on the flip side, with I find it ironic that in the age where women are using the most, they're diagnosed the most with anxiety, the most with depression, the most psychiatric medication services in that era, many of which are doing when they're actually single.
Mhm.
The self-reporting data doesn't do anything for me. Is basically what I'm saying. The data, the evidence, the constant, frequent disappointment of not being able to find an adequate partner, the constant need to overspend to supplement and make up for the lives that they can't experience with someone else, the high rates of student loan debt in the U.S., the high consumer debt amongst women in the U.S. I'm sorry, like they can self-report all they want about how happy they are. They'll trade places in a heartbeat for the woman that's married that says that she's so quote unquote unhappy. And clearly in the U.S. we have no problem initiating and filing for divorce. So it's one of those things where I'm not saying people are liars. What I am saying is that I think that it's a multivariate analysis that probably needs to take place, and that happiness is probably more on a scale than necessarily happy or not happy. So that's my honest assessment. And I think that I don't put all this stock in it's the women who aren't with men that are doing the best and happiest in life, and I don't even argue the opposite. That it's only the women who can find a good man that they're all happy and they have no complaints. I think you're going to have complaints whether you're single or whether you're living with somebody. Either you sick of yourself or you sick of somebody else. So that's that's what it is. Yeah.
I mean, surely, most of the divorces, though, are initiated by women is really because women can now be self-sufficient in the sense that economically, to a degree, you can figure out some things sexually. You don't need a man to buy a house, compared to, say, my grandmother's generation, who, in fact, my grandmother had to get married because she was pregnant. That doesn't exist anymore. So you don't have to marry a man if you want a child, and you don't have to marry a man if you want to have a house and a materialistically successful life. And so that's sort of emasculated men to a degree. Like,
I want to play this video here. Let me take this down here for a second here. I want to take this down for a second here because there's a lady, black lady, who's talking about this, right? And how women deal with being unhappy and depressed and all that. So let me take this down here. We'll get right back to this. I'm gonna remove that. Let's see. Stop screen. Share screen. Instagram.
But can we talk about it? Because while that study, I think, inaccurately depicted why Black men are struggling with education, there's a reason.
Black women will have depression and then go get a master's degree.
Okay, ladies, but can we talk about it? Because while that study, I think, inaccurately depicted why Black men are struggling with education, there's a reason why some of y'all got the degrees that you got. Black women are more likely to engage in high-functioning depression and overachievement as a trauma response. And that's essentially emotional avoidance, where striving for success and being booked and busy is really an escape of emotional pain. Some of us have used education as a path to worthiness and safety. So somewhere along the line, which I will tell you where, we've internalized that achievement means worthiness. And that often stems from childhood neglect, childhood trauma, and even racialized gender expectations. So this overachievement can likely be rooted in the desire to gain safety, control, and validation because we didn't have it earlier in life. And another thing, Black women facing unprocessed emotional pain may very well adopt a hyper-independent and ambitious attitude. But oftentimes it's just a way for us to protect ourselves emotionally. So while some of us are having these aha moments about why men aren't going to college, let's have an aha moment about what led you to getting all these degrees that you got. And why, in spite of all these degrees, you're still struggling in relationships, you're still struggling in friendships, and you're still struggling to take care of yourself. Come talk to me, come work with me, because the emotional and physical freedom that you're looking for ain't in them degrees. But I created something specifically for you, so drop a heart in the comments if this resonates.
Black women.
Thought she was spot on there. Thought she was spot on. All right, let's get back to the other one here. Share screen. Modern women. Modern women. Definitely agree. Yep. I think that's the reason why we can speak more freely. True. Or 29 like. Come on, y'all. It's 50 people watching. Hit the like button. Let's get up. At least can we get to 40? Can we get to 40? 11 people hit the like button. Come on, y'all. Come on now.
So, like, what is their role? Like, what are they? And the thing that I find strange is I find men in their 50s, or men that I know in their 50s and older, pretty secure in who they are. They've had families. I'd say I personally know a lot of successful men. They've had families. They've done well financially. They're not all happily in their marriages. They definitely don't hate women. Versus the younger generation, and these are men who also didn't. I'm talking about men in their 50s. They didn't grow up in this Me Too thing, so they're not afraid of women. But they understand the feminist movement. And
I don't know where this lady. Well, she's from England, but I'm 50s, and I understand what these brothers are talking about. From the time I was a teenager, 16 or so, right? I had to get trainings about sexual harassment and stuff. So this even though it wasn't called Me Too movement, I don't know what she's talking about. Men in their 50s and stuff. They're not. I don't know what she's talking about. I definitely can identify what these brothers are going through, and I was terrified. And listen, I worked in a police environment, male-dominated environment, but we still had to have these trainings. And as soon as you become a supervisor in the state of Connecticut, you got to take those trainings. So, I don't know what she's talking about, but whatever.
and these are men who also didn't. I'm talking about men in their 50s. They didn't grow up in this Me Too thing, so they're not afraid of women. But they understand the feminist movement. And then you compare it with men, sort of 25 to 35 and younger, that sort of younger Gen Z or young millennial age. And there's a huge amount of hatred for women, not understanding feminism or where it came from, and not understanding. And I think this is where there's a disconnect for me, is that young men, I think, are paying for the sins of their fathers, right? So the way that older men behave, younger men are now having to pay that. And they don't get it because they didn't grow up in that era. Whereas men sort of in their 50s understand that era. They understand what women went through in the work.
A little bit, I do kind of understand that. I'm not saying it was peaches and cream by any stretch of the imagination. That's interesting. High vibe. I completely agree with the overachievement as a trauma response. It fills the void. Women brag about having 3 master's degrees and complain about mortgage-sized student loan debt. Yeah, that baffles me. That baffles me. And listen, the only reason I went back to school is because my job was paying for it. I wasn't going to take out no crazy student loan debt. That's why I didn't go to college I went to community college and I was paying for it as I went. But there's no way I was going to go to a student. There was no way I was, as an 18-year, 19-year-old, going to go to college on my mother's dime. Because at that time I was looking at Florida State was a big school. And at that time I looked at, Florida State was like $7,000-$8,000 out of state for an out of state student. And this is in the 90s. I would kill for it. I would send my kid to a school for $7,000-$8,000, for an out of state. If you lived in state, I think the was like half, like $4,000 or $5,000, per semester or per year. But there was but I knew my mother couldn't afford that at that time, so I wasn't going to do that. But these kids today, that's why a lot of guys aren't going, because they don't feel it's worth it, and they don't feel it is worth the money. You're coming out with $100,000 worth of debt, $200,000 worth of debt. If your school is $50,000 a year and you're there for 4 years, you don't get any scholarships or help, work study programs, or grants, which now the government's cutting back on that. Crazy. College these days are so oversaturated. I'm an old school college graduate. Well, you're right about that. Listen, I wrestle, and listen, the wrestling I got to do with these students about AI. I'm like, I know you wrote this in AI. I know you did it. 10 different resources. You didn't read all 10 of these resources. You didn't read these. Crazy. Some schools are going back to pen and paper, because they know students are just AI and answers. They know it. Even with the tuition reimbursement for most companies, it's not 100%, and grad school is expensive. If you aren't going to make more than what you spend on education, then why do it? Flex versus remedy. Mine was that my city was 99% tuition reimbursement. But when I went, then they changed the contract to 75% reimbursement. So I only got reimbursed 75%. So I still had to kick out 25%. And that was and I only got my master's when I was there. And then when the pandemic hit and I was already retired, I went back to finish off. 64 people here watching. Thank you guys so much for checking out the show. Please make sure you hit the like button. Hit the like button.
Place. There were no rules and laws, and I certainly lived that. And that young women, in turn, didn't live through what I had to live through, very misogynistic work environments where there were no rules and laws, and men definitely stepped over many boundaries.
Well, she's right about that. Economy negatively affects a man's dating ability. Is it the same for women? I would say probably, right? Because if the guys can't take you out, I mean, where are you going to take the guys out? Right? So they probably can't. They probably can't. Aren't some restaurants and bars closing because there's nobody's dating and bringing people out on dates and stuff?
Young women today, none of them have lived through that. Mm-hmm. Yet they are behaving as if they grew up in my generation. And the young men, so they're confused because they're not behaving according to what their experience is. And the young men are like, hang on a second, why am I paying for what my great grandfather did or father did or whatever? And so the behavior between both of the genders is so confused. I mean, that's what I see. It's just young men saying, hang on, I didn't do any of this shit. I wasn't gross. I didn't do stuff that I shouldn't have done that was inappropriate and blah, blah, blah. But young women are blaming them for that when they didn't grow up in that culture. And that makes no sense at all. And then you add a layer on top of that women don't need men financially. I mean, of course, it's better. I can attest to that. I work, my husband works. It's way better. It's way better if you're happy and you work and are married and you're in a team and you go forward in life together. But it's not essential, whereas it used to be historically. And so I think it's put men in this very weird space. And we've talked about it a lot, like at the beginning of the conversation about incel, red pill, blue pill, and all of that, and this real rise in toxic masculinity amongst young men, this hatred of women, that like they absolutely like it's full on rage.
And we also like obviously being women, and having a podcast where we're very open about our opinions. You know, we see it like real time on our comments, on our everything, like on the messages we get, we see it. And so obviously, like, I know you're not saying that's not happening, and women and men are very much to blame on both sides of why this is happening. And I know we had brought up adolescence, and obviously this culture. What are you thinking about?
Where's it going?
Yeah, I see this is where the podcast is going to definitely become a lot more controversial with some of the things I'm going to say. But Melly, I'm going to agree with you 100% about, from the male lens and the reaction, about modern men are being made to pay for the sins of a patriarchy that they're no longer a part of.
It's not what you know, it's who you know. Don't ever forget that. Sometimes your degree will get you in the door, have you make more money. Sometimes it won't. You know, sometimes your degree will get you a job. Sometimes it won't. I remember a time I was applying for this one adjunct professorship. They wouldn't call me back. And one day a friend of mine was working there. I'm like, how'd you get this job? He's like, I know such and such. He made a phone call, got me in. Sometimes not what you know. It's who you know. At this point, patriarchy is a conspiracy theory. Oh, yeah. Listen, you're not lying about that. Dating is a big expense for a single man. Listen, one time I looked at and I was dating a couple of different ladies at the time. I looked at my statement. I had gone through $1,000. Like, never again. If I had not been accepted to public university, I would not have gotten my master's. It made no sense. I could increase my income with or without it. The degree accelerates advancement. Yeah. Yeah. So, High Vibe, are you saying that because of your degree, the doors got open? I'm not clear about that. Did your master's get your advancement, or would you have gotten the advancement without the degree?
That is, for a lot of men, this visceral reaction is the world and environment that their fathers or grandfathers were able to experience, were able to afford.
This is a great point he's about to make here. The world has changed so much, and men In particular, average men. There was a time when you could get a job and work at Sears selling lawnmowers and be able to afford a house. This point that he's about to make is great. House, your wife could probably stay at home and have a house, a couple of kids, dog. Great point he's about to make here. Great point.
Able to have access for a lot of men, this visceral reaction is the world and environment that their fathers or grandfathers were able to experience, were able to afford, were able to have access to, has been squeezed and reduced to a very, very small pool of men. And that's the reality. And that is a consequence of women changing the terms of what it was required for a man to have access to a woman sexually in order to get a wife, in order to have a child, in order to start a family, in order to not be a genetic dead end. I'm going to give an example personally, and I hope that this helps just at least to humanize, not excuse, but humanize where some of these unchecked emotions from men are probably coming from. My parents, when I was young, I believe I was in 3rd grade, we moved from Philadelphia to South New Jersey, in Willingboro, that's in the suburbs. And that home, 3-bed, 2.5 bath, huge front yard, side yard, backyard, was a house on the corner. That house at the time when they got it was probably like $120,000. And when they first moved, my mom wasn't even working. In order for me to get a comparable home like that, I have to make what both my parents made combined.
Oh yeah.
And in order for me to have a wedding like they had a wedding, how much do I have to make and spend?
For sure.
In order for me to get a degree, in order to make the money, how much debt do I have to go into? So there's an entirely different world of expectations that's being placed on a generation of men. So when the cost of living is higher, when the expectations are now elevated to a level it's never been in human history for any man,
Yeah.
it's the highest it's ever going to be for anybody in the Western culture right now. And your sexual counterparts are also making money, also entering into the workforce. And they unknowingly, or maybe knowingly, in the process of fighting for equality, fighting for their own liberation, getting access to education and money and resources, you doubled the tax base and you doubled the workforce and you stagnated wages for the men who were still expected to do this.
Yeah.
It came with it. So the ultra capitalists here in the States, the Rockefellers and other groups, that was a very subversive. They funded the very groups that they told women, this is the groups that are your advocates. They funded them. So as you left the home, as you took on student loan debt, you prolonged the period where you normally would have been probably focusing on starting a family. When you come back out, your expectations don't go lower. They go higher. When you went into college, you were maybe not making much of any money. When you come out of college, between the student loan debt in the States and the actual salary you're making, the pool of men that even qualifies is significantly reduced. What are you going to do with all of these men?
That's why men are so upset. Granted, they're probably taking out their anger on the wrong people, right? They shouldn't be lashing out in podcasts or lashing out viscerally at people. That's completely unacceptable. But this is what they understand that their fathers and grandfathers, the life that they lived, etc., and they don't have access to that life. And they're expected, as he said, to provide that life. Well, how can I provide that life if I can't get it? Right now, I gotta run up student loan debt to get an education, to get a job, so I can get a woman or to get a family, and they're mad and upset and angry about it. Is he married? Super fiscal deep roots. Is he married, or is his leverage stopping him because he states he's doing well? Again, a lot of these guys are not talking about themselves. I'm a 50-year-old guy. I'm not talking. I do this content because, if you don't do anything for these boys, then they'll end up in where I come from, the criminal justice system. I don't want them to end up there, right? They become mad, they become angry, they, become violent in some situations. We want to know, how do we keep boys out of prisons, etc. That's how I got to this particular space. He's coming from a similar space as a therapist, where he's worked with people in prisons, worked with people in different mental emotional states of being, and he's trying to figure all this out. And so this is where he's come from. But to answer your question, he's married and he just had a baby or so. But again, he's got an empathy for people in this situation, or sympathy for it. We should start right here. The cost of living. Yeah, the cost of living. The answer can't be no effort. Well, I mean, you got to put in the effort, and that's what we're trying to get guys to do. You got to put in effort, and even if the effort doesn't seem to pay off, and this is the rub. We have to get men to put in the effort for themselves, because if they don't put in the effort for themselves, they'll never get anything. They'll never get anything in life. They'll be sitting in their mother's basement, eating chips and bonbons and watching their funny movies all day. So this is the point that we're trying to get men to understand, is to put in effort. But when they're putting in effort and they're still expected to pay for dates, still expected to buy a house, still expected to do X, Y, and Z, and the funds aren't there, or at least the cost of living doesn't match it. You know, this guy talked about him buying his house. His parents bought a house of roughly about $120,000. The first time I bought my first house, and I got some help from being a police officer, right, one of those officer next door programs, my house was $96,000. Now the house is $300,000, $400,000. And you think that the guys are upset about this. My daughter's upset about this. My daughter has said the same thing. Like, she's got a little bit of coin. She makes pretty good money. She's working all the time. She wants to buy a house too. But when she looks at the prices as a woman, she can't buy one either. And it's not going to come for anytime soon. She recognizes she might have to partner up. She wants to find somebody who's decent, head on shoulders, everything else you guys put in the chat, good communicator, all this other stuff that she wants, is going to be faithful and loyal, all that. And they're going to have to partner up and buy a house. Now the average age of buying a house is 48 years old. I bought my first house when I was 23. What's going on here, right? So this is the world that we're living in. And we got this president administration, the big, beautiful bill, giving more tax cuts to the billionaires. That's another whole nother show. So this is what's going on here. Well, it doesn't help when a whole apparatus calling you toxic and oppressive while you're getting the short end of the stick. We're all getting the short end of the stick. To lessen student loan debt, many high school graduates are starting at the community college level. Some high school students taking some college level courses in high school. Yeah, I know that to be the truth. And when I was teaching on campus, we had high school students there. My daughter has an associate's degree. I sent her straight to community college. Got to cut down on this kind of crazy stuff. And again, why is the student loan debt so high? Because our government keeps selling us out. Oh, we don't have any money. We don't have money for colleges. We don't have money for free education, money for Head Start, money for Medicaid. We don't have any money for that. Oh yeah, but we're going to increase the military spending by $1 trillion. Ridiculous. Ridiculous. Same as a woman with an expectation of a provider male shouldn't seek a male who wants 50-50. Same as a woman with an expectation of a provider male shouldn't seek a male who wants 50-50. So you're saying that you shouldn't seek a man who wants 50-50? The guy just went through the numbers. I went through the numbers, right? The finances aren't there. Okay. My dad paid $9,000 for a house I grew up in, and he made $3 an hour and was the only one working with 11 people in the household. But that's what it was back then, right? Now it's not like that. And now people are refusing to go 50-50. Okay, where am I supposed to get $400,000 to buy a house? That just makes no sense. It makes no sense. It's not a realistic expectation for the average person. I have a friend of mine. His grandparents spent $11,000 for a house. $11,000. They're obviously elderly now, but that's what it was back then. There's nothing wrong with 50-50. It leads to changing your life. Exactly. That's what I'm telling them. That's what my daughter has to understand. She's understanding that now. You're expecting a man to pay 100% of the bills with a $400,000 mortgage is insane. Is insane. I mean, this is the point. You're looking at the top tier men And all the other 80% of men are just oblivious. They don't deserve to have lives. They don't deserve to have wives. They don't deserve to go on vacation. They don't deserve to have anything. Well, put in more effort, work harder. Okay. That's why I probably did. You're probably right. You're probably right. But that's why these guys are checking out, because it seems so unobtainable. I appreciate that, Super Fiscal. It's just crazy. That's why they're checking out. Agree, Miss Independent, but one of the women believing that versus the majority is another topic. Now the term is, I don't want to live with a roommate. Right. This is why we got to turn off the social media stuff. We got to turn it off the social. It's corrupting our brains. It's rotting our brains. Let's finish this off.
Yeah.
That's now being pushed to the margins and to the side. And we're not saying push to the side like women are kind of, they just play around a little bit. We go out on dates every now and then. We flirt every now and then. They are viewed as zeros. Nobodies. Invisible. And the numbers will fluctuate depending on the study, but a large percentage of women don't want to make 80K, 100K, 125K, and date a man is making half that.
I was actually going to reach out to him as soon as I finished this off, because I didn't know where he was at on Instagram. So I'm definitely going to reach out to this guy, see if I can get him on here. So I actually reach out to a lot of people. Some say yes, some say no. So
yeah,
for sure.
So very few.
And if you plot him in any other point in human history, he'd have a wife and 6 kids, a home that's paid on, and maybe 1 or even 2 vehicles.
Think about that. A guy making 50 grand, plot him in any other point in human history. Listen, you plot him in any other country. You bring your 50K over to China. You bring your 50K over to, anywhere in South America. You be living like a king. It's just here. They're not just here.
Yeah.
So you're taking modern adaptations, modern expectations, and being shocked when environments that's been very hostile to men, they've equated the toxic, negative things that men can do and projected that onto anything pertaining to be a distinction between men and women. That's how it feels. That's how it comes off. I think you both have referenced it at one point about this concept of toxic masculinity. It doesn't exist.
It doesn't.
There's toxic masculinity. I'm going to say it as clear as I can. Masculinity and femininity are descriptions of positive behaviors in terms of care, nurture, provision, and protection. That's what it is. That's what being masculine means. That's what being feminine means. Either you're very nurturing and protecting, or you're doing provision and protection. Like, that's what it means to be ultra feminine or masculine. The actual terms, that's what they mean.
Yeah.
They are in the affirmative. They are positive things. So when you're calling something a toxic version of it, there's literally is an oxymoron. It's toxic people. There's men that do toxic things. There's women that do toxic things. But when a man steps outside of being a masculine man in a particular scenario, that's not a version of masculinity. He's just being a toxic individual. He's being a toxic man. But that's not a toxic masculinity. Same thing with, there's no toxic femininity.
I don't know how many times we have to write. People have written pieces about this. It's been explained numerous times. Why are we still talking about that? It's crazy. Got to explain this.
Either you're feminine or you're not. Either you're masculine or you're not.
Right.
So unfortunately, what's happening is these boys, and it's so pervasive. It starts in grade school all the way through the latter years, all the way through college. These are environments that overcorrected. And they switched from, we're in a patriarchal system where we need to factor and prioritize how men feel and men's perspectives on these things, and it overcorrected. This is why in the States, millions and millions of young boys are being diagnosed with ADHD and being put on psychiatric medication.
Right. It's crazy.
Because they're in a system that prioritizes how girls tend to operate, move, function, and think, versus any psychologist worth their salt would know that prepubescent boys and even boys going through puberty, how much extracurricular activity they need, how many various forms of expression they need, how their way of bonding is often physical in nature, how there's a roasting process of just the normal communication, and how that's designed to kind of build up his ability to be able to deal with the world when school is done. So you're shunning, you're penalizing, you're punishing so much of what it means to be a boy and a man. You're having a huge market of people who are getting divorces and are now raising these boys with no father influence. Don't even talk about and ask about what's happening in the Black community. And then you're shocked when there's all this resentment and anger.
Mhm.
What did you think was going to happen if you said all men are dogs and they're not needed and we're questioning whether or not men are valuable, and a huge percentage of homes the father isn't even involved, or like, it just, at some level you have to acknowledge, like, it makes sense why there's so much anger and resentment. My stance when I talk to young men, or men period, is, so what are you going to do about it? Because the reality is, any client that comes in, what if I was to tell you, you don't have any control over anybody else? The market's the market. Women are women. Their standards are their standards. You can cry about it. You can be depressed about it. You can avoid it. Or you can look in the mirror and say, I don't match up to most of the things that most women want. And I can either do something about it or nothing about it.
Mhm.
And if you want to do something about it, we can come up with a treatment plan for the next 6 weeks, 6 months, of how you can radically improve yourself, how you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, your motivation, your body, your health, putting you in certain scenarios where you're going to build up the experience you need to feel more confident and comfortable, build up your career and resume. And I promise you, you're probably going to have significantly different outcomes. I've seen a whole lot of ugly short men with some beautiful women.
Absolutely.
I've seen it.
We love
I've
a
seen
short
it.
king.
But what he did was he put the work in,
Yeah.
so that he had the options. So the incel culture is based on men or young boys that are extremely frustrated and angry about not so much the access to sex, because they can go and outsource to pay for that.
Sure.
It's actually the lack of feeling someone is attracted to you as a person.
Mhm.
It's that, and a couple part. It's not just the frustration with the lack of attraction from the opposite sex. Like, nobody wants me. Nobody values me. It's also the second part, the unwillingness to do something about it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
That is what I definitely believe in. You got to do something about it. You cannot sit there and accept defeat and just lay down and die. You have to improve. You have to improve. You are a man, you have nephew, or if you're a woman with nephews, sons, you see them going down this path, you have to encourage them to improve. They can get, number one, the results that they want. They can level up, they can become the best version of themselves, they can keep pushing forward. And if they want a woman, they have to improve their education, their status, their social status, their hygiene, their physicality. You have to improve. You cannot just lay down and die. You cannot just lay down and die. Hit the like button, y'all.
that pool of young boys or men, when they're surrounding themselves by people who talk this way, that are super negative, that's constantly downing and saying the market's unfair, women have changed, what's wrong with them? Why do I got to make 6 figures in order for them to even go on a date? Like, what the heck is going on? While those of us as men learn the game and realize, don't hate the game, learn the game and get in, you got other players or people who are sitting on the sidelines so pissed off that they're not getting any starting time.
Mhm.
If you're watching a basketball game, if you're watching a soccer game, you got to put in the work in practice. You got to work with a coach. You have to work on your own. You got to work on your coordination, your speed. You got to build up your muscle mass. You have to put in the work to justify you getting the playing time to get on the field and or the court.
Mhm.
The incels, they're at a space either because of exposure, not working with men like myself or people like myself, where they don't know that much of what they're struggling and dealing with is the consequence that women have changed.
Mhm.
We are in modernity, but also an unwillingness to look in the mirror of things they need to change internally. So that's actually what's going on.
So that's the end of that. Let me give it a like. If you guys get a chance, go over to that channel, Sharing My Truth podcast. Give them a like. I think they also have an audio podcast as well. Let's see. Their genes are not moving forward. He's preaching now. So we're going to try to finish that up. There's a part 2. We're going to try to finish that up maybe Friday night, Thursday or Friday night. We'll see. Thursday or Friday night. So be on the lookout for that. We'll finish off the rest of this. Is another hour. I have not watched that, so we'll be watching that live. This is like the third time I've seen this full clip here. Dr. L, I get your point. Still, the other day, a dude was popped on the balloon show for finishing residency in anesthesia, but not being established. Come on now. They pop ladies. They pop the ladies that pop dudes because they smile too much, because they show too much ankles on their sock. I mean, just absolute foolishness. Just absolute foolishness. So, I can't take that seriously. Let's see. For a man, your money brings you options. For a woman, your fitness and femininity brings you options. I actually deleted someone's chat. I'm sorry. Okay. He went in. There's a second part to the podcast too. Yeah, we're gonna watch that maybe Thursday or Friday. Thursday or Friday. So I thank you guys for checking out the show. If you want to buy me some lunch, I appreciate it. Thank you guys to those Sage members. If you're not a member of the channel, consider joining the membership. We have content only for them. Tomorrow is Wednesday. I'm going to do review some police stuff, some police videos on my other channel, Dr. L's Breakdown. So if you want to learn about some police stuff, check that out. And that's it. I thank you guys for checking out the show. I really, really do appreciate it. Appreciate y'all. Hit the like button if you have not done it on your way out. Hit the like button. I feel like money doesn't bring men better options. I think it does in the long term. Here's the frustration. I think that this is a lot of what A Peaceful Life was addressing, is that unfortunately, the guy with money has to pay for something that she is giving to someone else for free. And that creates a resentment in the guys with money and therefore causes them to check out. Because if you go to a restaurant and everybody else is getting free bread and they make you pay $5 for the bread, you're going to feel some type of way. How come everybody else is getting free bread? So a lot of these ladies who are talking about, the bad boys, and they get it, and they're breaking rules for bad boys and all this kind of stuff, right? They break the rules for the bad boys. But the guys who don't have the swag, don't have whatever, they got to pay. The guys with money are going to feel a certain type of way about that. And either it's going to cause them to recoil as well. So keep that in mind. Absolutely. Okay, guys, we'll see you guys. Thank you so much. Hit the like button on your way out. Show tomorrow night on my other platform. And much love and peace. Guys, take care of yourselves. What's up, Chris? Thank you so much for checking in. Appreciate you guys. Have a great night.